Okay, so put in a standard form. I mean, first of all, the very last thing we did in those 3 sections about conic sections, it was classifying, right? And when you classify, all we need to look at is these 2 right there, right? And based on that, you determine which is the standard form you need to put it into, because they're all different, right? Well, which conic section are they equal? It's a circle, right? So putting it in the standard form means put it in this form. That standard form. Okay. So what process do we almost always have to go through to put in standard form? Complete the square, right? So we're going to have to complete the square on the y terms. So 4x squared, we already have the y's are together. So I'll factor out the 4 from y squared minus 4y. And put the 15 on the other side, makes it negative. Remember, if this number here is not a 1, it has to be factored from the first 2 terms. Right? So now we're ready to figure out what number do we add to complete the square. Positive 4, right? Half of negative 4, negative 2. Negative 2 squared, positive 4. I think there's still little mistakes made, like putting minus 4 there, which would not be correct. And then the next is, what do I add to the other side to compensate for the fact that I just added 4? 16, because it's 4 times 4, right? Plus 16. Okay, so this is 4x squared plus 4 times y minus 2 squared equals 1. Okay. Now, that's not standard form. It's a circle. It needs to look like this, right? What should have happened at this point is divide by 4, right? Get rid of these coefficients that are in front of the x squared and the y squared, so that it all shows up as a radius on the other side. It'll be x squared plus y minus 2 squared equals 1/4. That's the answer, right? There were some very fundamental mistakes made here that honestly are well beneath what we should be doing here. One of them was this, saying, when we were doing ellipses and hyperbolas, we would divide by the right-hand side to make a 1. So let me just divide everything by 1. Why would you divide anything by 1? It's the same thing, right? It doesn't make any sense to do that. That's the kind of mistake we really shouldn't be making now. Dividing by 1, right? The other thing is to say, at this step, people looking at this part right here, right? Just this here. Let's get rid of my divide by 1s. Then right away went like this. X squared over 4 plus y minus 2 squared over 4 equals 1. I'll just move that 4 to the denominator. Right? Also, now you can't just decide, well, I don't like it in that position there. I think I'll move it to the bottom there. That'll look better. Right? You got to do basic algebra stuff, right? And whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. You know, when you divide by 4, I mean, what would you have to divide by to have a 4 in the denominator? 16, so that it cancels that 4 and leaves a 4 behind. And then you'd have a 16 on the right. But you can't just say, let me put that in the denominator. That'll make it look like one of the standard forms that I know of, right? So those are the mistakes. It should have just been this here. I mean, you do need to know circles, and you need to know before you march down the road of graphing or anything. I mean, what is it that I'm aiming for here? And it's pretty easy to tell just by the pattern of those 2 numbers, right? The coefficients of x squared and y squared. Right? If they're equal, it's a circle.